Now, we don't like to think about it, but it could happen to anyone where you're involved in a road accident and you have to claim damages for that. Now, of course, you have to employ the services of an expert attorney to help you out in these kind of matters. And Michael Broglio from Broglio Inc. is here to tell us about what can arise in these kind of matters. Good to have you back, Michael.
Good morning, Kathleen.
Now, today we're talking about a case that took particularly long in court, or actually to get to some certain kind of point. What happened in this scenario?
Sure. Look, basically in this particular case, and the client here suffered psychiatric injuries. He witnessed a horrendous accident that took place right in front of him and with his truck. And it basically made him functionally disabled. He was never able to work again. To carry on driving his truck. Ultimately, the case was settled for 1.6 million, but he spent 7 or 8 years with a previous firm of attorneys without the case going anywhere until he came to us, and we then took it over and finalized the case.
7 or 8 years, that is pretty drastic, I must say. Because I know in the beginning when we started talking about this, we said for each particular case there is a particular time frame. 2
Sure.
years for this kind of case, 3 years for another kind of case. So how do you know?
I think that the client needs to be responsible sometimes as well and try and gauge where is this case going. Has the attorney issued a summons? Has the attorney got a trial date? Are you being sent to experts? For example, in this particular case, once we took it over, it still took us 2 years to finalize it, because really in those 7 or 8 years that the previous attorneys had the case, they'd only really progressed to maybe 6 months down the line. They were trying to settle the matter. They had no expertise in actually taking these matters to court and fighting them, and they were hopelessly just trying to beg and pray that somehow an offer would drop out of the sky and the matter would be settled. And I think that a client at that particular time needs to be a bit more assertive with the attorneys and say, look, I'm not happy with what things are what's going on. I'm not saying I'm changing my case or taking it to another attorney, but I'd like to know from you, where are we at the moment? And what are you going to do to get this case to move forward?
But as you're saying, I think what's important is also that it's your right and your responsibility as the client to engage with your attorney to find out what's happening in your case.
Absolutely, and I'm not saying that the client is always right. Sometimes the client is wrong. Sometimes the attorney is doing a great job, but perhaps not communicating it that well and explaining what is going on or giving regular updates. There's no doubt that the process in itself is a slow process. It does require patience. It does require time. But if you're not getting updates all the time, and if you're not getting satisfactory answers as to when will the trial date be, what are we going to do, etc., that's when you need to consider a change.
Yeah. Now, another thing I think that's important that we wanted to highlight in this particular case is that whenever we think of road accident fund and personal injuries, we think of physical kind of injuries, but it's not always just a physical injury, is it?
Absolutely. I mean, as we said in this case, it was emotional, it was psychiatric, it was post-traumatic stress. You can be affected in many ways, and how it impacts on you can be totally different from one person to another. The same injury may affect a labourer and put him in a position where he may never work again, whereas an attorney or an accountant with the same injury isn't affected at all. Mm-hmm. And that is the beauty of our system. It really looks at who you are, what are the facts of your case, and then together with all of our experts, our industrial psychologists, our occupational therapists, and all of our various doctors, we build a case around how your life's been changed, how your life's been impacted, and what it will take, and in particular financially, to put you back where you would have been but for the accident.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that there's lots of factors that play a role in determining what the claim is and what the settlement is at the end of the day. In this kind of case, if, let's say, the driver who was involved in the accident wasn't wearing a seatbelt, what effect would that have?
Look, generally when we have somebody not wearing a seatbelt, there's an apportionment. The case is reduced by about 20%, but it would really depend on the facts and circumstances of the case. Somebody not wearing a seatbelt and hitting the windscreen and getting scarring on their forehead probably obviously needs a higher apportionment. Somebody who might not have actually suffered any injuries as a result of not wearing a seatbelt may be in a different situation. Your lawyer will take you through that and your lawyer will guide you, but the moral of the story is wear your seatbelt.
Yeah, thank you very much once again for your insightful answers. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So as you hear it, it is your responsibility and your right as a client to approach your attorney and to find out exactly what's happening in your court case or in your legal affairs. But also you can catch all the information on our website, expressoshow.com. Michael will be joining us again next week.
Stay with eXpresso and SABC3.